My name is Tiffany and welcome to Impact Lab's Driving Equity in Education. Before I pass it to Amy to kick off the session, a few housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded, and for recording purposes, if you are not a panelist, please turn off your camera just for now. Once the panel discussion is over, you are welcome to come on camera and interact with the speakers and ask any questions. Feel free to also use the chat if you have any questions and we'll read it off. Let's get this session started, Amy.
Awesome, thanks Tiffany. Good morning everyone. So excited to be here with you today. Thank you for joining our talk. We hope it'll be fun, interactive, informative, and just really excited to be here with you today. So before we dive in, I'll just give you a little lay of the land of what we're going to be talking about. So we'll be talking a little bit about Impact Labs, our latest initiative in equity in education. And then you'll be hearing from our fantastic partners, Austin, Tiffany, and Diana, who you see here on the video screen, about their experience both in the sector and what they're seeing in order to drive equity in education, as well as how they've been participating in Impact Labs to date. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and dive in. And just by way of introduction, my name's Amy. I lead our Impact Labs program here at salesforce.org, and just honored to be here with you today. All right, as our lawyers always ask us to do, please make any purchasing decisions based on what's available today in the market, and not any conceptual work you might see here today. So without that, let's dive in a little bit about Impact Labs. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the program, we launched about 2 years ago, and our focus has been on co-designing technology solutions with our community around tough social issues that are facing us today. So we really recognize here at .org that social innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes a lot of different expertise, perspectives in order to really drive change on a complex social issue. And so we set out to bring together all different perspectives, from government agencies to nonprofit organizations to educational institutions, to really understand the problems that we're trying to solve at large together from a variety of different perspectives, vantage points, so we can make really informed decisions in the solutions that we try to design together. And so we created Impact Labs to have this safe space to take these risks, to come up with bold ideas, to work together. And we also recognize that sometimes nonprofits, our educational partners, they don't always have the resources to be able to make this tech innovation happen on their own. And so we said, how could we set up a space to help de-risk some of that innovation process, bring together our platform, our pro bono volunteers to help make some of that innovation a little bit more possible for many in the space. So that's a little bit about Impact Labs. The way we work is through a really collaborative process using design thinking methodology. So we do this throughout the entire experience, where we're bringing in challenge ideas from our community, doing discovery with community experts like the 3 folks here on the call, as well as in this case, we had 12 others also join them in this pursuit. We go through a series of community ideation and co-creation exercises that are led by pro bono volunteers. And then with the intent of designing and building an MVP or a V1 of a solution that could potentially help drive change around a specific issue. So the lab that we've all been working together on, and we're excited to share more with you today, is around addressing equity in education in the United States. And so you'll see here on the left are fantastic, we call them community fellows. So these are organizations who have committed to participating over 6 months with us to this issue and helping to figure out ideas, ways technology could support issues around equity in education. We have a couple of folks here with us today, Austin, Tiffany, and Diana, who will speak to their experience. And as a cohort, we've specifically been focusing on how to support Black and Latinx learners pursuing non-traditional pathways, getting to and through their first year of post-secondary. So for those of you who that term non-traditional might be a new one for you, we're talking about students who perhaps are first generations or first in their family to go to school, to college. They might be attending later in life after the age of 24, working full time. So juggling a lot of responsibilities outside of school itself, which can present a barrier for them to be able to succeed in their goals around getting college and through college into career goals. We've together explored a range of ideas. I'm not going to go into these in great detail, but a lot of different opportunities we saw for ways technology could play a role. We're going to narrow in as a lab on one of these opportunities, but we're really excited and encouraged by kind of all the different ways that technology could play a role. And we'll be sharing some of this work kind of more publicly in the coming weeks through a research report that you can check out when that comes out, so you can see a little bit more of some of the additional thinking that went into this cohort and some of the ideas that surfaced through them. All right, so without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to our panelists. So we have Austin, Diana, and Tiffany. Let me tell you a little bit about them if you're not familiar with them. So Austin serves as the CEO of College Forward, which is a Texas-based nonprofit that provides high-touch, high-tech services to first-generation low-income students. College Forward has developed a student database and mobile app built entirely on the Salesforce platform and distributed through the Salesforce App Exchange, helping to enable their impact to reach over 1 million students by 2023. Diana is the Director of Nonprofit and Education at Coastal Cloud with 20+ years of experience in systems integration and strategy engagement. As a passionate and a mission-driven executive, she works with entrepreneurial organizations to harness the power of strategy, partnerships, systems, and talent for social change. And Tiffany is the co-founder and COO of ESAR Consulting Group, as well as founder of HBCU Force, a nonprofit organization that partners with historically Black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions and organizations to implement programs that provide early access to cloud computing careers. So welcome, Austin, Tiffany, and Diana. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
All right, so let's dive. Yeah. So we're going to dive right into questions. We'll leave a little time at the end, hopefully, for audience questions. So if you have anything burning that you want to ask this incredible panel, feel free to put it in the chat or, jot it down on a piece of paper and save it for later. All right. So to get us started, as we were prepping for this panel, we were talking about let's make sure people understand the big picture of what's happening in our education system today. And I'd love to just hear from you, what is the state of the nation and what challenges persist among students from underrepresented minorities? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, I can get us started and, want to hear from my panelists as well here, but great to be with everybody here. Thank you for kind of centering on our core mission. I think across all three of our organizations and our work, we are all losing sleep over the inequities in higher education today in America. And honestly, it's one of the most underreported, I think, social inequities and gaps in society. And we're all believers and advocates that for the work that we do, a higher education degree, whether that's a certificate, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, is the closest thing to a silver bullet in terms of breaking the cycle of generational poverty. So that's how we kind of show up to the work at College Forward. I know probably my peers agree with that. But to zoom out, Amy, to your question about just kind of the state of affairs right now, spoiler alert, not to be cynical, but they're not great. The inequities between high income and low income students and the gaps between their respective college degree attainment rates is actually getting worse over the past 50 years. So if we kind of teleport back to 1970, around 42% of high income students had some sort of college credential compared to only 6% of their low income peers. And if you fast forward 50 years and you think about all the investments we've all made as a country, as nonprofits, as the for-profit corporate sector, and you see what our outcomes look like today, the gap is actually more than doubled. So now fully about 80% of high income students have some sort of college credential compared to only 9% of their low income peers. So over 50 years, we've seen a 3 percentage point increase for our low income student population, who in Texas, just for context of how big of a problem this is, about 65% of all of our students in the K-12 system are considered low income. So you put these two numbers together, and again, not to start us off on such a sobering note, but it's just the reality. This is the uphill battle that we're working with, and the complexities of how we've designed our higher ed system are too complex. And it's why organizations like ours exist, to help students navigate the myriad challenges that crop up to and through college. So that's some kind of the underlying why we're here and why these products and these conversations were really kicked off. And certainly eager to hear what my colleagues have to add to that.
Yeah, and to add to that, when you look at the makeup of the students that you're talking about, and you think about high schoolers that are first generation college students, some of those students you're having to help with making sure they understand what items they need for college, because maybe they don't have someone that has taken that path before. So maybe they don't know that they need comforters and a refrigerator and a microwave. And even the ability to purchase all of those things in bulk and get it there is a bit of a process that without experience, I know, if you've experienced moving to college, that is a bit of a journey that requires some planning. And just the family support that those students need to make it through their first year. You don't just drop them off and think that they're going to make it. And also helping those students understand time management. Then when you look on the college side, when I'm working with students through HBCU Force, those students are really today balancing a lot, especially with the pandemic. And so they are balancing school and work. A lot of the students I work with are working full or close to full-time jobs because a lot of them are paying for either school or books or their apartments. Those students need help understanding how to balance that. How do we get those students into a career path and an internship if they're having to work and having to make that choice between working or taking an internship, especially if that internship is not paid. And then you have making sure students understand the career, the earning potential of the career path that they're going to take, understanding the impact of taking on student loans. And is that, if you choose a low paying career path, you have a lot of student loans. How does that balance out, and what's the plan to pay that back? And how can we reduce the amount of student loan debt that a student comes out of school with? So there's a lot there to kind of unpack.
Thank you, Tiffany and Austin, for laying that groundwork of some of the challenges, both from the macro perspective of what we're seeing across the nation in terms of people, graduation attainment and rates there, all the way to the specific barriers that students might be facing. I remember one of our interviews in this Impact Labs process, one of the students we spoke with said, he didn't know he had to pay for books. So he had funding to pay for everything else, but didn't know he needed the extra few $100s to pay for his books. And just a small kind of barrier like that can really impede somebody's success. And I think that was great for you to highlight some of those, Tiffany. So specifically, as we said earlier, in this Impact Lab, we've been focusing on supporting Black and Latinx students on what we call non-traditional pathways, getting to and through their first year of post-secondary education. And just wanting to hear, as a tech experts here in the room, what role do you think technology plays in making a difference for these students or the institutions themselves? And are there any ideas that have been surfacing from this Impact Labs cohort that you're feeling really kind of excited or encouraged by that you want to share?
Yeah, I can respond to that. I think it's been exciting to bring together so many different partners involved in this process, and who are all share this passion for the power of technology at scale. Talked a lot about, both from an institution perspective and from the student perspective, just how strapped for resources everyone is, especially right now in COVID, and the need to provide, use technology to provide asynchronous experiences that allow those people to access the information that they need and the tools that they need when and where and how they have time to do so. And that those little pockets of time often come, particularly for students, in between going from one job to the next, or late at night, or other ways. And so when they are able to then focus on how do they address some of these barriers to education that Tiffany and Austin talked about, then they need information at their fingertips quickly, and how can technology do that at scale, providing a personalized experience, and helpful at scale. So it's been exciting as a part of this cohort not to really, there hasn't been a lot of either or thinking. It's very dynamic. And so we're looking at everything from how does AI provide that personalization and can anticipate helping the client with that next step. as well as, and how do we harness that power and then recognize that there are limitations to technology, and how do we make a seamless handoff to a human at the institution to really then fill that gap or bridge that next step for a student. So it's been exciting to see all of those different things come together in the way that we're thinking about this, solving this at scale.
Yeah, and what I liked about in our brainstorming process is that we discussed the career paths and how to help students identify career paths, and then how to help those students actually get opportunities and internships and how to facilitate that. We thought that it was very important, and I especially think it's very important to help upskill students earlier, help to get them certified, exposed to technology, because they're, especially with technology and all the remote working, we're remote today, the ability for students to be in school and have an internship or a job that's remote in technology actually helps them to see the value of taking that path a little bit earlier. It helps to put money in their pocket and give them experience while they're in school instead of having to wait. And so I love that in the Salesforce ecosystem, especially a number of partners and companies have been able to provide that type of experience for some students.
Thank you, Tiffany and Diana, for sharing your perspective on the role technology is playing, both in terms of upskilling as well as in the solutions that we're brainstorming together. So you mentioned brainstorming, and I mentioned earlier that Impact Labs has a pretty unique and collaborative approach to developing technology solutions. And so specifically, we moved as a cohort to that really broad challenge statement that we shared with you earlier to some specific areas where technology could play a role, leveraging our design thinking toolkit along the way. So would love to hear from you just a little bit more about your experience participating in the process and what you're taking away from it as partners and bringing back to your own organization.
I can start. I love the collaborative nature of the Impact Labs. I like that in the same room, we're not only technology experts, but industry experts, which was very valuable to make sure that we were thinking about holistically about the solution and coming at it from different angles and different viewpoints. Sometimes when tech is created without those industry experts, we can create a solution that might be amazing, but not actually fit what the industry experts know that is priority, know that what's really needed. It might be, this is really cool, but if it did this instead, that would actually be more helpful to us. And so to be able to bring together those two groups was really great, and just the orchestration of all the stakeholders together. Inside of the Impact Labs, they use an application called Miro, which I love, and I want to implement actually in some of ESOR's projects and HBCU Forces programs that we do. It was a really cool way for everyone to put their ideas all on the same screen, and the way that Amy and the team kind of facilitated the whole session virtually was really powerful. And so really, really enjoyed that part of Impact Labs.
So great. I can just build on that a little bit to say, the community has been incredible. I think that, we have so many students that we're so focused on back home. As I speak for myself, we have about 6,000 students that we're supporting through these coaching models day in, day out. And so to be able to pull out, it kind of often can feel like we're on an island trying to think about these problems and these solutions by ourselves. And having this space has just been exceptional. And it's been a great refresher for me just to step back, get out of the weeds a bit, and think more about the high level strategy that we're all trying to working toward. And to be able to use that and kind of leverage the tech expertise. And I'm just blown away at how quickly the resources at Salesforce have developed some tools that we have been trying to build ourselves or thinking about building for years, and they've done it in a couple of weeks. In some cases, it's just exceptional to see these prototypes. These aren't theoretical conversations; they're really translating to real products and hopefully real services that we can all benefit from. And to Tiffany's point, how we went about building these has felt really collaborative in a way that you don't typically see in these sorts of formats. So I'm grateful for it and excited to see what comes next.
I'd just add one other thing that was a big takeaway for me for the process, as Amy mentioned. It was run through a design thinking methodology, which is great to be a part of. And, you know, as partners, we so often focus on the end, we always focus on the end users of the system. And often that means for us, the staff members at institutions or at our clients. But this process really elevated the voices of students who would be benefiting from these tools. And it was a reminder for me of just how important that is. So they had videos and quotes and helped us get a little taste of the research that had been done by the Pro Bono Fellows so that we could hear directly and begin to kind of put those points together as we were bringing our own expertise and ideas to the table. So it's something that I definitely think about now in my own work as a partner. How do we make sure that that end beneficiary of the you know, our client's client, how their voice is represented in the technology solutions we're building.
Thank you, Diana, Austin, and Tiffany. Really interesting points to hear kind of what you're taking back to your organizations and kind of the hopeful future that you see for some of this tech and its direction that it's heading. Before we open it up to audience Q&A, just one last question from me. So audience, get your questions ready. What advice do you want to share with other partners who are interested in supporting this initiative around driving equity in education? What can people do back at their own organizations?
I would just reiterate what I just said. I think really taking the time and figuring out ways for you to have that voice of your client's client as an input into your process. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this process for me, as well as just really excited to see this tool come to fruition and to bring this as an opportunity to clients from which they can build.
My advice would be to don't reinvent the wheel. There are lots of amazing organizations that are already doing this work. And so if you take your technical expertise and your willingness to support, your availability of resources and employees to support their efforts, it would be really awesome for you to partner with organizations like Austin's and some of the other organizations that we work with to be able to help them reach their mission.
I'll just bring us home to say, I think my biggest call to action for everybody is that I know there's a lot of things going wrong in the world and probably in your own backyards and your own community. And so it can sometimes be disorienting to not really where to focus that energy. And you may have other passions, right, of where your own community is having different issues. I would just ask that that folks really take a look at how the students in your community, especially those from lower income backgrounds, are doing. What do those gaps look like in your own backyard? And then to Tiffany's point, almost guarantee you there's a College Forward, there's another type of nonprofit in your backyard doing incredible work. And in the nonprofit space, for those who are kind of closest to the work with the students day in, day out, we often lack the resources, the technological skill sets, or just the ability to pay people for that technical skill set in the way that for-profits can. And we have the exact same types of needs that for-profits have when it comes to data management, you know, systems integration, efficiency gains through tech. So as you're thinking about this, and if you're particularly, I'm assuming you're here because you're passionate about education to some extent, see what's going on in your backyard and see if there's any sort of strategic way for you to add value to some of these great organizations that are out there doing this work.
Thank you all. Such great and thoughtful responses, advice for people to take action. I want to open it up now to anybody, any of the participants who might have questions. Feel free to come, I think, at this point on camera. We'd love to see your faces and hear from you. So just open it up if anybody has any questions for this incredible panel about their experience or their work around equity in education. Okay, I'm just going to jump in with a question that I think people might be curious about. And in the meantime, if that sparks another one, go for it. So we talked a little bit about some of the solution directions and kind of ideas that were surfacing out of this cohort. Just want to see if one of you wants to say a little bit more about the direction we're pursuing and kind of what's exciting or what's interesting to you about that direction.
I can start just by saying I think that because of the human-centered design approach, I mean, we don't maybe say this enough as part of our initial responses collectively, but we've been really focused on students throughout this entire process. This isn't about kind of the end user beneficiary as our students, right? And that is the human that we are centering our design around, not College Forward, not other organizations who are participating. It's really about working backwards from the primary needs that we as practitioners see on the ground day in, day out from our students' experience. So I just want to start with that I think all of the product priorities and kind of service priorities that we've surfaced around financial aid, around mentorship, career pathways, and simplifying those processes, the general process of how we got there and kind of the initial prototypes of what we're looking at, they're pretty looking, they're intuitive, they're hitting what feels like the most kind of cross-sectional challenges that we know students share kind of across the board that are just universal to the low-income student experience. So I'm just ready to rock and roll and see these things kind of get tested out over the next few months.
Tiffany, Diane, anything you want to add?
Yeah, just I can say, I think one of the things I've loved about the way we've approached the different solutions was looking at it kind of on a matrix of what's the impact versus how difficult will it be to implement this solution, and trying to find that nexus of something that's going to have a really high impact, but also will have the speed to market that we need it to, because there might be something that would be absolutely incredible that is on our list, but it might take, the complexity of really implementing that is a barrier to the speed at which we're trying to work. And so I've loved that debate that we've had, and excited that we've, I think, landed on something that has that speed to market.
All right, well, go ahead, Tiffany, so you come off mute.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I agree with what they said.
All right. Yeah, so just in our last minute here, I'll take us home, round us out. So thank you, Austin, Tiffany, Diana, for joining and sharing your experiences, and the rest of the audience for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or reach out to all of us on Discord. We will also be sharing more broadly with the community kind of what's coming with a research report we're publishing that takes all the insights and kind of lessons learned from this lab and exposes them broadly to the community at large so everyone can benefit. And then also stay tuned for more on the solution that we are pursuing. The goal is it's a community-driven solution, so we want to make it available to all for kind of as easily as we can and as quickly as we can. So stay tuned for more on that as well. And thank you again for being with us here today, and we'll hopefully see you all again soon.